Do you know the story of Bonnie and Clyde? Do you truly know the story? Bonnie Elizabeth Parker was born on October 1st, 1910. She was the daughter of Emma and Charles Robert Parker. She was the middle of three children. She was raised by her mother because her father passed away when she was 4 years old. When Bonnie was 16 years old, she married her high school sweetheart, Roy Thornton. But with Roy's history being in and out of prison, it made it difficult for Bonnie and Roy to be together. When Bonnie was 19 years old, she met a gentleman by the name of Clyde Chestnut Barrows. Everyone called him Clyde Champion Barrows, but his birth name was Chestnut. He was the son of Henry Basil Barrow and Camilla Talitha Walker. He was the fifth of 7 children born. Growing up in the early stages of the Depression was difficult for the Barrow family because when they first moved to Dallas, Texas, they didn't have a place to live in. They didn't have a home. They couldn't rent a hotel room. They were living underneath their wagon. Through many, many trials and tribulations, their father finally could afford a tent for them to live in, which was a better step than what they had previously had. Clyde was first arrested in 1926 after the police confronted him about a vehicle he had not returned. Bonnie and Clyde first met on January 5th, 1930. Bonnie was staying with a friend who had broken her arm, and she was trying to take care of her and make sure she had everything she needed. Bonnie and Clyde were inseparable when they first met. When they first met, Clyde had already been arrested. He had already faced jail time. He had already been in prison. Bonnie was a good girl. She didn't know anything about this. But when it came down to it, she had the most immense love for Clyde that she did not care what his background was like. So, at this time, Clyde had gone through and he had many people looking for him because he had already robbed some banks. He had already robbed some stores. He had already had a lot of auto theft at this point. Bonnie didn't care. She loved him for who he was, which most women do. Well, this got Bonnie into some trouble. On April 19th, 1930, Bonnie Parker was arrested for a failed burglary attempt on a hardware store. She was attempting to steal some guns and ammunition for their next escape. Bonnie Parker served jail time from April 19th to June 17th of 1930. The reason she only served that little time for burglary is because they did not want to indict a woman. They'd rather indict a man than a woman. Well, speaking of arrest record, Clyde Barrows was arrested numerous times. He was arrested for auto theft. He was arrested for escaping from prison. Clyde Barrows escaped from prison on March 11, 1930, to be with Bonnie Parker. Then, after he escaped, he was later rearrested and had served time until he was granted parole on February of 1932. February 1932 is when Bonnie and Clyde's crime spree began. Their crime spree all across the nation. They stole vehicles from Illinois to Texas to Louisiana to Oklahoma. They stole many vehicles and they robbed many gas stations and stores. But there's one thing that most people don't know about Bonnie and Clyde. Yes, they stole vehicles. But if the vehicle had a person in it, when they were stealing the vehicle, they would take them miles up the road and actually let the person out of the vehicle, give them money to get back home with. Bet you didn't know that. Bonnie and Clyde were not that bad of people. Most people think because Bonnie and Clyde were the crime spree and the fearless couple, that they didn't have a heart, that they had a heart of stone. Bonnie and Clyde just wanted to love each other and be with each other, but they fought to the bitter end. Yes, they robbed people. Yes, they stole. But the reason they did that is because they were going to get enough firepower and ammunition to fight against the prison that Clyde Barrows was in 1926. This prison, he was sexually assaulted numerous times. The man that sexually assaulted him, Clyde Barrows, took a lead pipe and hit him over the head and cracked his skull. But one of the inmates that Clyde knew took the blame for it because he was already serving a life sentence. He didn't want Clyde to mess up his life anymore. So he took the blame, which released Clyde because his mother had talked to the judge and the judge had granted him parole the first time. The second time he was granted parole was in 1932 when all of this started. Bonnie and Clyde were a fearless couple. Now, I have a very old, very, very old newspaper. This is the actual newspaper from the Bennett Democrat in Bennetville Parish, Louisiana from May 24th, 1934, the day after Bonnie and Clyde were murdered. Well, gunned down more or less. Bonnie and Clyde fought to the bitter end. This right here gives the actual photos of Bonnie and Clyde, of their little love affair that they had. It actually has pictures of them when they found time to horseplay and have fun. But it also, on the back, has the actual pictures of Bonnie and Clyde on the day they were gunned down in Bennetville Parish. Now, I have attached some files inside of this assignment that will show you the inside, show you pictures of the vehicle that they were in, which was actually a Ford. It was from 1933. The lady who actually owned the vehicle actually took a picture with her attorney the day after she got it back when Clyde Barrows and Bonnie Parker were gunned down in it. But thinking about Bonnie and Clyde, I paid tribute to them because they were fearless. They fought against the law, and as the song goes, the law won. But at the same time, they showed spirit. Bonnie loved to write poems. Bonnie loved to write stories. That's how she expressed herself. Clyde, he was a little bit different. He was like any other man. He would go through and he'd show his own side through playing with guns and fire and just being a man. But I pay tribute to them because they were not afraid to fight for what they believed in. They fought for Clyde to go through and fight back against the prison who did not care he was sexually assaulted. That is why I pay tribute to Bonnie and Clyde. So do you truly know Bonnie and Clyde? Or are you unsure?